brand new video. So today we're going to be doing some maintenance on this Start rally car. So maintenance on the Start rally car. Why am I doing maintenance on the car? Well, so if you look on my Instagram, you'll see a track where I'm using the car and I'm running it magless, and it's going around the track. So this is one of the first cars that I turned magless. So this was before, I think it was before I got any hobby cars. So this is the original car that I kind of experimented with, and it just goes to show you don't need to spend a lot of money. So I think what's really important in emphasising is you don't need to spend a lot of money when you first kind of get into it. People think, oh, actually they might see a few videos because there is a lot of content out, and people talked about running cars magless and buying expensive cars, so Slot It and NSR, but really at home, are you going to be able to, unless you've got a proper layout, are you going to be able to run those cars to their full potential? And I would say no, you're not. So I think when people start out, it's really important that you practice on cars that don't cost very much. So this car here is a mid £20 car if you buy it new. If you buy these second hand, you can pick one up for about £10 or £11. That is fantastic value. So, and you can mess around with these cars and not worry because they don't cost very much. So you can actually get them running without a magnet, glue and true the tyres and add weight to them and float the bodies and mess around with them. And I really enjoyed running this car. It obviously doesn't compare to a hobby car, but it's still really, really fun. And if you've got two of these cars running around the track and both don't have magnets, it's fun to tune them to run, and they do run fine. So you don't have to spend a lot of money if you're just starting out. Don't feel like you have to. You could get a layout that you could place on the floor or on a table, and a few of these cars, you know, for if you're in the UK, around £30 to £40 potentially. That's if you go to swap meets and buy all the track second hand. If you look straight on eBay, you could probably get a layout and additional cars in the region of £70 to £80, and that's for a big layout. You can obviously get a very basic figure of 8 or basic track for a lot less, probably £40 to £50. So you don't have to spend a lot of money to start with, and I wouldn't recommend. So if you're an adult and you just want to dip your toe in, think, do I want to progress on to buying hobby cars? Do I want to progress on to buying different track systems? The best thing to do, at least in the UK, is just to get cheap cars, scale electric track, and just have a go at running them. Get used to track maintenance, get used to designing different layouts, and do some maintenance on these cars. So what we're going to do in the next video is go into detail of taking this apart and what I want to do, and I'll explain a bit more in a second why we need to swap this pinion with another pinion and what happened essentially, because there was a crash and this car got damaged and I had to try and fix it. So that is coming up in a few seconds. Okay, we're back. So I'll just explain a few things with the car. So to start with, fronts are varnished. So I don't know if you can see that. Very smooth fronts. So the reason why you varnish the front wheels or you put zero grip tyres on is because you don't want, as the car goes around the corner, you don't want traction on the front. You just want traction on the back. And you can do upgrades to the cars to run independent from wheels and things like that, but that's going into lots and lots of modifications. So on a car like this, it wouldn't be financially, it wouldn't be, you just wouldn't be sensible to put that much money into a car that's only worth £10. It's just, so I've done the basics to get this car running without a magnet, varnish the fronts. I think I might have trued the tyres slightly on the front as well. It's not going to be the same as a hobby car, because these cars are knurled onto, they've got knurled axles, and if you start taking the wheels off the axle and putting them back on, you can never get them true. Whereas like a Slot-it, you'll be able to actually take the wheels off with a grub screw and put the wheels back on. So everything's precision engineered. So that's the difference between a hobby car and a toy brand car, is the tolerances and how it's made and fine precision, and you just don't get that with a hobby car. So when we start ranting and raving about the cost of cars, that is an issue when Scalextric are charging £50 odd for a car and you're not getting wheels that you can take on and off, and for about the same price you can get a car that you can do that with. So that's why people are a bit annoyed. But yeah, so I've glued and trued the rear tyres and conditioned these tyres as well. So these are very soft, and I've actually taken the edge off the tyres. So when you true the tyres, you've got to true them across and then you've got to round the edges off, and that helps with cornering and things like that, and handling on the track. And these are never going to be 100% true really, because again, the limitations on because it's a hobby car, the wheels might not be 100% true. I don't know if the axle's slightly bent, so this is as good as it's going to get on a hobby car really. Just do your best to try and true them down, and as you touch these tyres, they're really, really soft, and that's what you want to try and get the tyres to a consistency of. The newer Scalextric tyres are actually not too bad. They're not the same as obviously a hobby brand car, but you can get them to a reasonable level. Right, so we'll talk a bit about the shell as well. I could reduce the weight more, so I could snap these lugs out, the motor mounts out. I haven't yet done that, but that is going to reduce weight. The reason why all these, so the motor mount and the bearing holders are here, is to keep everything in the car, because Scalextric like to lock everything together and make it so nothing's going to pop out. So a motor won't pop out, a bearing won't pop out. So yeah, it is what it is, but you can take these out to reduce weight, and that's going to increase performance. But I haven't yet done that. I might do that in the future and I can show you doing that. But these are actually not too heavy. If you remove those, it would really significantly reduce the weight. Anyway, going back onto here. So what happened with this car? So I've got a new layout in the garage, and I was running the car around, lots and lots of fun, trying to get quick times. I was taking the car down the straight and hammering it down the straight and then chucking it into the corner. Obviously, if you're trying to push and push and push a car, it is going to eventually go, and because it isn't a magnet car anymore, it doesn't completely just snap and let go and smash into a million pieces, but it came off on the corner and there was no barrier and it just slid and just dropped. And the height that I've got the actual layout on is probably around 3 to 4 feet off the ground. So obviously 3 to 4 feet with the car just kind of dropping can do it some damage. And what actually happened was the guide blade cracked, and then when I was running it around the track, actually snapped off. These are a pushing guide blade, so I was thinking, oh, you know, what can I do? Because I don't want to spend a lot of money. You can get a new guide blade for this, but it's like £3 or £4, and it's like, do I really want to spend £3 or £4? So this is another cheap car that I picked up, and I basically took all the I took the guide blade off here, but what I tried to do was glue the guide blade, the old guide blade. What actually happened is some glue got down onto the contacts where the wires are, and it kind of glued it to the guide blade. And then when I tried to separate it, it actually snapped, the wire snapped off. So this is the wire, and you can see there's a shoe on one of the wires here, and the other one is snapped off, completely snapped off. So the cost of getting a new wire is just, it's not economical. So I salvaged this and ripped the motor out of this to put in here. So this motor is from this car. When I switched it over, the pinion didn't mesh that well with the gear. So all I'm going to do is take this pinion off this motor and put it onto this one. So that will then give a better gear mesh, because it's very tight at the moment, and it could do with being a bit looser. So that's what I'm going to do today. Just loosen, switch the pinion. Yeah, and you're going to watch me do that. And to do that, we're going to have a pinion puller, and we're going to have a look at how you actually do that and take the pinion off. So most people that have been in the hobby will know how to do this, but for anyone that's new or is unsure, I'll take you through it. Right, back in a sec. I have had some issues, which has been interesting. So I basically filmed taking the pinion off this motor and switching it back onto for this car, because it gives a better gear mesh. So I've actually done all of that and found that the video went over 1 gig, and then the memory card ran out of space. So I'm now having to redo that video and show you taking the pinion off. What I'm going to do, I'm going to pop the motor out, pop the axle out. I'm going to just take the pinion off here. Obviously I'm not going to then take this one back off, because this is the one that should be on here. So just to show you how to take it off. But yeah, sorry about that. One of those things, but there we go. All fun and games, and the editing is really, you know, sometimes a bit of a pain, but so it does take quite a long time to put all these videos together. So yeah, is what it is. So the issue that I had The car fell onto the floor, broke the guide blade, tried to glue the guide blade back. Then that stuck one of the contacts on the wiring. I then tried to take that off and it broke. I then had to strip the whole thing out and replace the guide with the one from this car. But anyway, we'll get there in the end. So yeah, let's get to it. So pop the axle out. So this should just snap out. And axle out, easy. You can see here that we've got some weight. So this is not magnetic. This is so these aren't magnets. They're just lead weights. So I've got one either side and one at the bottom, and then a little bit up near the guide to keep the front end down. So again, this is needed to run the car because the magnets pull the car down onto the track, and that's how you get the traction. Hobby cars are designed to run without magnets to start with, so this is why again a lot of the scale electric cars can't run without magnets. One, because the tyres aren't good enough, they don't actually give enough traction, and then two, because of the chassis design. These chassis are very thick and they don't really bend much, so they don't flex, and that's an important component. When cars are going around the corner, you've got lateral forces on the car. The car needs to be able to work, and that's how you get increased performance as the tyre pushes into the track and the body flex. With the motor pod, everything can move around. So yeah, without going into too much detail, that's what I've done on the car. So glued and trued the tyres, varnished the fronts, and added weight for it to run. So I will get some footage on the next video. The next video is going to be about how to get into the hobby and what you should be buying to start with. And we can see this car running round, so you can see the kind of performance versus a car that has a magnet in it. Anyway, so to pop the motor out, be really careful, but you can just put a bit of leverage on the motor shaft and that will then pop out. You do have to be careful because you can crack the motor mounts on these. They're not designed to be taken, for the motors to be taken in and out, so you do, and over time these can break. You can glue them back in, but just be careful on that. So once you've got all that out, I'll show you on this motor. I'm trying to think where the screw went, the body screw. Oh yeah, it's stuck to the motor because it's magnetic. So remember to place your body screws somewhere that, what we'll do is we'll pop them in there. So have a little pop when you're doing maintenance. Ideally you can get a mat as well, which is ideal. I don't have my mat, which is probably not the best. But next we're going to get the pinion off. So here there's a notch and you wind that up to pull this off. So all you do is place the motor against here, and then all we're going to do is wind this, wind this up, and now the pinion's clearly off the motor shaft, and we've got the pinion free. So swapping pinions over can save you a lot of money. So instead of buying the whole motor with the pinion, you can just buy a pack of pinions. You can get different tooth pinions as well. So on the scale electric cars, it's usually a 9-tooth pinion. So they're just, I think they're nylon pinions, I think. So that's what you get on the Scalextric cars. I don't know if these are geared slightly different. I think they might be, but they do run smooth. Yeah, so then once you've got that off, you can swap them over, or if this is broken, which if you're looking at restoring vintage cars, quite often, a lot of the time I've had it, these actually break and you do need to put a new one on. Anyway, so the pinion just slides down the shaft. You'll notice that on the shaft you've got splines. This pushes down onto here and stops the actual spur gear moving. So all you need to do for that is on the frame, on the pinion puller, is fit the motor into the frame. So all you do is place the pinion this way and line the piece of metal up here, and this pushes against the shaft, and you'll find that it sits in, and all we do is you'll be able to see it going down, and we can then double check to see how far down the shaft it's gone. That looks about right, but you can make adjustments. To get the perfect mesh, you will need to play around with that. Yeah, so that's how you use the puller and pusher on there. These are very inexpensive, so you're looking at £9 or £10, and they are essential, especially when you get into scratch building and hobby cars, because you will need to maybe change the gearing and so on. Yeah, so right, so pretend we've switched it over, which we have switched it over, just the other video went up over the file size that I could upload, so this has already been done. So you just fit this back in, so one end goes there, and then it should just clip in there. Just make sure it's in properly, and that's that bit done. Then we just need to clip the bearings back and the axle back in, so that should just clip in. Just double check that. Yeah. You can tell when it's wrong because that was very tight, and I just needed to, I think the motor wasn't in properly. So what we're looking for is a nice mesh, not a lot of side to side play. So if you see there's not very much play there, hardly any at all, and you don't want a lot of lateral play, and this wants to move freely. And that's important because as you're getting on and off the throttle, it wants to be smooth and responsive. If it's tight, it won't be able to do that, and the motor won't be able to spin up to speed, and that's going to affect acceleration and braking. So really important that you get these cars set up right. They don't come set up very well from the factory sometimes, and you do have to make adjustments and play around with them. So the hobby, you need to be able to do maintenance on cars. You need to. So the best way to start is just by getting a cheap car and messing around with it. Turning it magless is great fun, to be honest, and we'll have a look at that going around the track in the next video. So we'll wrap it up there, and thanks for watching, and see you all soon.